The first offer came as a simple message, one that was meant to be a formality, a gesture of goodwill. The Galactic Council, an alliance of the galaxy's most powerful species, had decided it was time to reach out to humanity. The humans, a young and relatively insignificant species from a backwater planet called Earth, had caught the attention of the galaxy. They were nothing like the other species the Council had encountered. Primitive, yes, but with a spark that intrigued them. The Council, made up of beings whose civilizations spanned millennia, were used to ruling over countless worlds and species. They saw themselves as the arbiters of peace in the galaxy. They believed that for humanity to survive, they needed the guidance of the galaxy's most powerful entities. The message was sent, carried across the stars by the most advanced communication technology available, and it arrived on Earth in a matter of hours. It was a simple offer: join the Galactic Council, become part of the intergalactic community, and humanity would be protected, supplied, and granted access to the knowledge and resources of countless other species. It was an offer that no species had ever turned down. To refuse it would mean certain extinction. The Council had never once been rejected. But the humans surprised them. In the high-rise offices of Earth's United Nations, President Clara Montgomery stood before the massive screen that displayed the communication. Around her, diplomats from all over the world were waiting, tense with anticipation. The offer had been presented as a great honor, a momentous occasion that would mark the beginning of humanity's place among the stars. The Council had provided assurances that they only wanted what was best for Earth. Yet, as the message played, something about it didn't sit right with Montgomery. The message itself was polite, almost courteous, but there was an underlying tone of condescension. The Galactic Council offered humanity a choice, but there was no real room for negotiation. It was as if the offer was a given, a matter of fact that they had no choice but to accept. The humans were just a tiny, fledgling species. What could they possibly offer in return? That was the tone, and Montgomery felt it in her gut. After the message finished, silence filled the room. The diplomats, some of whom had been eagerly awaiting this moment for years, looked to Montgomery, expecting her to accept the offer immediately. But she didn't. She stood there for a long moment, considering. She was not naive. The message may have been carefully worded, but it was clear to her that the Council saw Earth as little more than a pawn in their vast, galactic chess game, and humans, as far as she was concerned, weren't going to play by anyone's rules but their own. "Decline it," Montgomery said firmly, looking at the others around her. The room erupted in shock. It was unprecedented. Diplomats, politicians, and scientists exchanged stunned looks, and whispers filled the air. The rejection was not just bold, it was dangerous. How could Earth possibly survive without the protection of the Council? What would happen to humanity if they turned their backs on the galaxy's most powerful alliance? Montgomery's advisors tried to reason with her, urging caution. "You can't just reject this, Madam President. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. The Council will crush us if we don't join them. We have no chance against them." Montgomery shook her head. "You don't understand. They want us to join, not out of respect, but because they think we are weak. They think we have no choice but to bow down. But they don't know humanity. We don't follow anyone's rules. We make our own." With a steady hand, she sent the response. It was simple, just one sentence. "Humanity declined your offer." As the message was transmitted, a heavy weight settled over the room. No one spoke, but everyone knew that things had just changed. The future of humanity was no longer guaranteed by the protection of the Galactic Council. Earth would be on its own now. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. Far across the stars, in the heart of the Galactic Council, the message was received. The alien species that made up the Council were all watching closely. They were used to being obeyed, to having their words listened to and followed without question. The reaction to humanity's refusal was one of stunned disbelief. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, a species had rejected the Council's offer. The leaders of the council were quick to react. They had seen the humans' potential. Their quick rise from a war-torn planet to a civilization capable of exploring the stars had not gone unnoticed. But no one had expected them to be so bold, so defiant. The council, after all, had never been rejected before. It wasn't just that the humans had turned down the offer. It was that they had done so with a certainty that shook the foundations of the galaxy's power structure. The High Counselor, a tall and imposing figure with scales that shimmered like polished metal, was the first to speak. His voice echoed through the council chamber, a mixture of frustration and confusion. What are they doing? Do they not understand the power of the Galactic Council? We offer them everything they could ever want, and they refuse. A Zarnik ambassador, a species known for their calm demeanor, stepped forward. Perhaps they are more than we anticipated. We must consider the possibility that Earth's rejection is not an act of ignorance, but of strength. The humans are unpredictable, yes, but they also have something that no other species has. What is that? The High Counselor asked, narrowing his eyes. Will, the Zarnik ambassador replied. The human spirit is unlike any other. They do not bend easily. They have survived against odds that would have destroyed any other species. I believe they will never bow to anyone, not even us. The room fell into silence as the weight of this new reality sank in. The council had never been so uncertain, so vulnerable. They had miscalculated humanity, assuming they would be like the countless other species they had absorbed into their fold. But Earth had just sent a message to the stars that they were not like the others. The humans would not be a part of the council. They would stand alone. The question was, for how long? Across the galaxy, ambassadors from other species, who had been observing the council's communications with Earth, began to take notice. The message was clear. Humanity was not afraid. They would not follow the rules of the galaxy. They were something entirely different, and for the first time, the galaxy's leaders were unsure of what to do. Back on Earth, Montgomery stood before the council once again, her decision made. She had no illusions about the consequences of rejecting the council's offer. There would be backlash, there would be challenges, but humanity had always thrived in the face of adversity. They had made it this far by being different, by daring to be something more than what the universe expected. Montgomery's heart was heavy, but she knew she had made the right choice. Humanity wasn't going to be a subject in the galaxy's game. They were going to be players. And if the galaxy couldn't accept that, then they would have to face the consequences of underestimating Earth. As the leaders of the Galactic Council scrambled to adjust, and the rest of the galaxy held its breath, the first chapter of humanity's journey in the stars had begun. It was a journey that no one, especially not the Council, could have predicted. The rejection had shaken the galaxy, and no one would ever forget it. The days following humanity's rejection of the Galactic Council's offer were filled with tension. The Council, once a powerful force in the galaxy, now found itself uncertain and confused by humanity's bold move. In the grand scheme of the galaxy, humans were still relatively new to space exploration, and the idea that they could turn down such an offer seemed absurd. To them, it was unthinkable. Until now. At first, the Galactic Council tried diplomacy. They sent a group of their finest diplomats and ambassadors to Earth, attempting to understand the motives behind humanity's refusal. Perhaps they thought it was a misunderstanding. Perhaps humanity didn't fully grasp the weight of the offer. Surely, they would come to their senses once they were presented with the reality of the Council's power. But the human response was cold and resolute. We stand by our decision. The diplomats returned to the Council with their tails between their legs, their failure marking the beginning of a new and dangerous phase for humanity. The Council was not accustomed to being refused, and they were furious. Behind closed doors, the Council leaders discussed their next steps. Earth, the home of a species so unpredictable and defiant, had to be dealt with. The decision was made. The only way to handle this defiance was through force. The Council assembled a fleet like no other. Ships that had once conquered entire worlds were now being outfitted with the most advanced weaponry in the galaxy. Their plan was simple: launch a devastating strike against Earth, breaking its defenses and forcing humanity into submission. They believed this would be enough to remind Earth of its place in the galaxy. The attack begins. The Council's fleet entered Earth's system quietly, moving with military precision. The human military had no idea they were coming, not until the first tremor of the attacks sent shockwaves through Earth's atmosphere. The aliens had chosen to strike at the heart of Earth's most vulnerable point, the planet's largest cities. In an instant, entire regions were consumed by massive shockwaves from space-based weapons. The attack was swift, brutal, and overwhelming. Humanity's first response was sheer panic. People ran for cover, while emergency systems scrambled to provide shelter. The world's leaders, still recovering from the shock of the rejection, were caught off guard. President Clara Montgomery, who had stood firm in rejecting the Council's offer, now faced the impossible task of leading humanity through its darkest hour. At first, the humans had no idea how to fight back. Their weaponry, though advanced, wasn't nearly as powerful as the fleets of the Galactic Council. Earth's military had never faced anything like this before. The Council's ships hovered over the planet, their enormous size casting shadows over cities like a grim omen. The sky crackled with energy as alien warships unleashed waves of destruction from above. The unexpected turn. But Earth's military was not entirely helpless. Deep within their military command centers, something unexpected happened. Humanity's unexpected resilience kicked in. For decades, Earth's scientists and military engineers had been working on developing new technologies, most of which were still in experimental stages. These included defensive measures and countermeasures to shield Earth from outside threats. The Council had underestimated Earth's will to survive. Within minutes of the first attack, Earth's most advanced defense system, known as the Gaia Shield, activated. The Gaia Shield was a planetary defense system that had been built in secret, funded by a global effort to protect Earth from the very possibility that had now become reality: an attack from an external force. Powered by a combination of deep space mining and experimental energy sources, it was humanity's last line of defense. The first wave of the Council's energy blasts hit the Gaia Shield with tremendous force. For a moment, it seemed like the shield would fail. The very fabric of the shield shimmered, rippling with energy as the blasts collided with it. The Council had not anticipated that humanity could create such a formidable defense, especially without their knowledge. But then something unexpected happened. The shield held. In fact, the Gaia Shield absorbed and dispersed the alien energy blasts, converting the energy into usable power. The Council's weapons, designed to devastate planets, were now being redirected and absorbed by Earth's defenses. Captain Nathan Ellis, the leader of Earth's military forces, watched in awe as the shield began to turn the tide. The human forces, though outmatched in firepower, rallied behind their leader. Ellis, a seasoned fighter, had been working with scientists to develop counterattacks. With the Gaia Shield holding strong, the time to strike back had finally arrived. Humanity's new weapons, developed in secret for years, were unleashed. Using a combination of modified spacecraft and experimental weaponry, Earth's military engaged the Council's fleet. Although humanity's ships were smaller and less powerful, their tactics were something the Council hadn't expected. Earth's military used their home advantage, fighting with a tenacity and unpredictability that had long been underestimated. The alien fleet retreats. The Galactic Council's ships, once seemingly invincible, were now under attack. Their fleets had not counted on humanity's ability to adapt so quickly. The humans, with their endless creativity and stubbornness, had turned their greatest weakness into their most powerful weapon. The Council, in a panic, ordered their fleet to withdraw. The humans were not defeated, and their ability to defend their planet had forced the Council to reconsider their course of action. The retreat was swift, but the damage to Earth was already done. The Council's message was clear: They would stop at nothing to ensure that humanity understood its place. As the alien fleet retreated, Earth's people were left to pick up the pieces. Entire cities had been leveled, and countless lives had been lost. But despite the devastation, humanity stood tall. They had not been broken. If anything, the attack had only solidified their resolve. In the aftermath of the battle, President Montgomery stood in front of her people, speaking to them through a global broadcast. Her voice, steady but filled with emotion, resonated with every listener across the planet. We've been attacked. We've been tested, but we are not broken. The galaxy may think they can bring us to our knees, but they've forgotten one thing. Humanity fights. We don't give up. We rise. We will rebuild, stronger than before, and we will never bow to anyone. Not now. Not ever. The broadcast echoed across the globe, and the people of Earth, shaken but proud, began to rebuild. But the question that hung in the air was clear. What would the Galactic Council do next? Had humanity's rejection of their offer and their surprising defense been enough to make the Council rethink their plans? Or was this just the beginning of a war that would shape the fate of the galaxy? The days following the retreat of the Galactic Council's fleet were a mixture of relief and fear. Earth had survived the initial assault, but the cost was high. The planet was scared, cities in ruins, and millions of lives lost in the battle. Yet, despite the destruction, something remarkable had occurred. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. President Clara Montgomery, though burdened by the loss, stood resolute. Her message had resonated worldwide. Humanity would rebuild, and they would never kneel to the Council. But what the Council didn't know, what they had completely underestimated, was the true depth of humanity's potential. As the dust settled, humanity began to rebuild its defenses. But the rebuilding process wasn't just about repairing the damage from the alien attack. It was also about preparing for what might come next. Earth's best minds were hard at work, not just to restore the planet to its former glory, but to strengthen their defenses, develop new technologies, and unlock the very secrets that the Council had never anticipated. Humanity had a power, one that was not immediately obvious, and one that no one, not even the humans themselves, fully understood. President Montgomery had known that the humans had something more than just physical strength. They had a drive, a will to survive, a resilience unlike any other species the galaxy had ever seen. This spirit, this refusal to be subjugated, had been humanity's greatest weapon. But as the weeks passed, Montgomery began to suspect that there was something else, something deeper at play. Deep within the laboratories of Earth's top research facilities, scientists and engineers were quietly working on a mysterious project. It was called the Epsilon Protocol, a project so secret that only a handful of individuals knew its full scope. For years, humanity's greatest minds had been studying energy manipulation, quantum fields, and DNA. They had uncovered a strange anomaly deep in the human genetic code, a hidden potential, one that allowed humans to harness incredible energy, not just from external sources, but from within themselves. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a theoretical possibility. But as the project progressed, the results were undeniable. Humans were able to tap into a source of energy that was not available to any of the alien species. It wasn't just technological power. It was something far more primal. It was human potential, linked directly to their minds and their will to fight, adapt, and survive. This energy source was not easily controlled. It took time to understand, and many tests were needed before it could be harnessed properly. The potential was staggering. Imagine a species capable of powering entire cities, manipulating energy fields, and even altering the physical world through sheer will. This was the hidden strength that humanity had always carried, an untapped well of power that had only just begun to surface. The Epsilon Protocol was still in its early stages, but the results were already astonishing. Small-scale experiments showed humans controlling energy, manipulating the environment around them, and even surviving injuries that would have killed any other species. But it wasn't just the scientists who were unlocking these powers. Ordinary humans, too, began to tap into these hidden reserves. The trauma of the alien invasion seemed to awaken something in people. Some were reporting strange abilities, enhanced strength, heightened senses, and even telepathic communication. Earth's greatest minds were baffled by this phenomenon. They had always believed that human potential had limits, but now it seemed like the sky was the limit. One of the first to fully harness this new power was Captain Nathan Ellis, the commander who had led the successful counterattack against the Council's fleet. After the battle, Ellis underwent a series of medical scans, and to the surprise of Earth's best doctors, his physical and mental state had changed. His body had healed at an accelerated rate, and his mind seemed to function on an entirely different level. Ellis had become the first human to truly unlock this potential. At first, he thought it was just a side effect of the trauma from the alien attack, but as the days passed, he realized that he was not only surviving but thriving in ways he had never thought possible. His senses were sharper, his strength greater, and his mental clarity was unmatched. He could think faster, process information more efficiently, and even predict outcomes with remarkable accuracy. It was as if his brain was functioning at an entirely new level. He began working with Earth's top scientists to understand what had happened to him. They discovered that Ellis, like many others, had unknowingly tapped into the hidden potential of humanity's biology, a biological energy source that was not only physical but also mental and spiritual. Ellis wasn't the only one affected. As more and more humans experienced similar changes, the scientific community began to realize that humanity had a power within them that no one had expected. This energy, linked to the human psyche, allowed them to adapt at an exponential rate, overcoming obstacles that had once seemed impossible. As Earth's hidden power began to reveal itself, the rest of the galaxy took notice. The Council, reeling from its initial failure to subdue humanity, had underestimated the resolve and resilience of the human race. The reports of humans harnessing energy in ways that no other species could began to spread throughout the galaxy. The Council, already weakened by their failed military strike, could no longer afford to ignore this new threat. At the Council's headquarters, the High Counselor was once again summoned to address the growing concern. The reports had been flooding in from every corner of the galaxy. Humanity was no longer just a small, insignificant species. They had become something entirely new, something dangerous. They'd done it, the High Counselor said grimly. They've unlocked something. Something that we can't even begin to understand. The humans have the potential to rewrite the laws of physics, of biology, and we have no way of stopping them. One of the other council members, a sleek and dark-eyed species known as the Tralians, spoke up. We need to stop them before they become a real threat. We've seen their resilience, their power. If we don't act quickly, they could become more dangerous than any species we've ever encountered. But the High Counselor was hesitant. We can't just destroy them. Their power, their potential, it's unlike anything we've seen before. We need to understand it first. Perhaps we can learn from them. Perhaps we can even use it. Back on Earth, Captain Ellis and President Montgomery were well aware of the growing danger. They knew the Council would not let their defeat go unanswered. Humanity had become a target, and soon, the entire galaxy might turn against them. But humanity's response was clear. They were not going to back down. The battle for the future of the galaxy had just begun, and humanity was determined to be its leader. As the humans prepared for the next phase of the conflict, they began to understand the true nature of their power. It was not just about physical strength or advanced technology. It was about their indomitable will. Humanity could shape their own destiny, and the galaxy had yet to see the full extent of what they were capable of. The Council had been warned. The question now was, would they heed it, or would they face the wrath of humanity's hidden power? The galaxy was now on edge. What had once been a unified group of powerful species and civilizations, all bound together under the Galactic Council, was now in disarray. The rebellion that humanity had sparked wasn't just an isolated event. It was the first crack in the facade of the Council's dominance. The rest of the galaxy watched in awe, fear, and uncertainty as humanity's surprising power began to unfold before them. Captain Nathan Ellis and President Clara Montgomery stood at the helm of a world that had just discovered its own strength. But the challenge ahead was no longer just about defending Earth. It was about navigating the complex and dangerous politics of a galaxy that had once seen humans as insignificant. Now, the galaxy saw them as something much more formidable. In the days following the shocking revelations about humanity's newfound abilities, President Montgomery called for an emergency summit. The United Earth government, along with representatives from the top global military leaders, had to decide on a course of action. Earth's forces were strengthening by the day, thanks to the incredible advancements humanity had made in harnessing their latent potential. But Montgomery knew that raw power alone wouldn't secure humanity's future. Her eyes, still clouded with the weight of the invasion, were focused on one thing: survival. She knew that they had to find a way to avoid a full-scale war with the galaxy. Humanity could win battles, but war on a galactic scale would be beyond their capacity. A treaty, an alliance, was the key. But would the galaxy's species, many of whom had once treated humanity with disdain, be willing to cooperate? Or would they attempt to crush Earth, seeing it as a growing threat to their control? Ellis stood beside her in the war room, the room buzzing with strategy discussions and reports. "We've already shown them that we can fight," Ellis said, voice firm. "But we can't afford to be reckless. We can't take on every species in the galaxy. We need allies, and we need to show the rest of the galaxy that humanity isn't just a threat. We're a force to be reckoned with on our own terms." Montgomery nodded. "We've been preparing for the worst, but it's time to start thinking about the best possible outcome. If we approach this right, we might be able to avoid a war entirely. We need to make them see that we are valuable allies, not enemies." But even as Earth's leaders were focused on diplomacy, things were quickly heating up in the Galactic Council chambers. The Council had learned of humanity's rapid evolution and their newly unlocked powers, and they were scrambling to understand just how far-reaching this potential was. Could humanity truly reshape the galaxy? If so, how would that affect the delicate balance of power they had held for millennia? In a private meeting, the High Counselor addressed the heads of the most influential species in the galaxy. The tension in the room was palpable. Some were still reeling from the defeat at Earth's hands, while others were afraid of the implications that humanity's power held. "The humans have proven themselves more resilient than we expected," the High Counselor began, their voice grave. "They'd not only rejected our offer of cooperation, they've shown they have the capacity to defend themselves, and more importantly, to challenge us." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation set in. "We must act before they become an even greater threat," a member of the Trallian delegation spoke up. "We cannot allow them to amass more power. If we do not strike while we have the advantage, they will be in a position to challenge us, and we will lose everything." But another voice, a representative from the Quivers, a peaceful species known for their wisdom, interjected. "You are underestimating the humans. They are not like any species we have encountered before. We should consider an alliance, not war. If we stand united, we could grow stronger together." The High Counselor raised a hand to silence the murmurs of the room. "It is true that they possess untapped potential, but they are still unpredictable. What if this potential turns against us? What if their power becomes uncontrollable? We cannot risk our survival." As the debate raged on in the council chambers, President Montgomery's team on Earth worked tirelessly to reach out to the various alien races. Using their rapidly advancing communications technology, they sent out messages of peace, extending an olive branch to those species who might be willing to join forces. They were clear about one thing: humanity wanted to forge an alliance, not to conquer. "We can bring new knowledge, new strength to the table," Montgomery's message stated. "We don't want to destroy what's already been built. We want to contribute. Together, we can create a galaxy that works for everyone. One that is not ruled by fear, but by mutual respect. The message was met with a mixed response. Some alien races, particularly those that had long been allies of the Galactic Council, rejected humanity's overtures outright. They still saw humanity's defiance as an act of war, and they were unwilling to take the risk of entering into an alliance with such an unpredictable species. But others, such as the Quivers, and a few smaller species who had long been oppressed by the Council, saw the potential for a new order in the galaxy. These species had suffered under the weight of the Council's rule for centuries, and were intrigued by the idea of joining forces with humanity. They saw a chance for real change. As Earth continued its attempts at diplomacy, the first signs of division within the Galactic Council began to surface. Some members were already preparing for war, believing that humanity's rise posed too great a risk. They pushed for a decisive strike, aiming to eliminate the human threat before it could grow too large. Meanwhile, the more cautious members of the Council pushed for dialogue, suggesting that humanity's power could be harnessed for mutual benefit. They argued that a united galaxy, with humanity included as an equal partner, could become an even greater force than it had ever been. The Council found itself at a crossroads, torn between conquest and cooperation. Back on Earth, President Montgomery, Captain Ellis, and their team knew that the window for diplomacy was closing. Time was running out, and the choices humanity made in the coming days would determine their fate, and the fate of the galaxy. If they couldn't find a way to form alliances with other species, they would have to face the full wrath of the Galactic Council. But if they succeeded, they might just change the galaxy forever. As Montgomery prepared to send one final desperate message to the Council, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental, something that could change the course of history. The fate of the galaxy was about to be decided. The final days of tension between Earth and the Galactic Council were upon them. President Clara Montgomery and Captain Nathan Ellis stood on the precipice of an uncertain future. Earth had done everything it could to show that it was not a mere pawn in the galaxy's game. They had resisted the Council's offer, fought off their initial attack, and uncovered a power within themselves that no one had anticipated. But now, the stakes were higher than ever. The message from Earth had been clear. Humanity wanted peace, but if war was forced upon them, they would fight with everything they had. They could not be intimidated. But there were still those who believed that humanity's growing power was too dangerous to leave unchecked, and as the days passed, the tension only grew, until it reached a boiling point. In the Galactic Council chambers, the debate was reaching its most critical juncture. The Council had been split into two factions, one calling for war, driven by fear and the belief that humanity's potential was too great to allow them to remain free, and the other calling for diplomacy, recognizing that the galaxy could no longer afford to be ruled by fear and control. The High Counselor, the leader of the Galactic Council, stood before the assembly, his expression grim. The humans have proven themselves capable of defending their world. Their power is undeniable, and if we do nothing, we risk them becoming a force that we cannot control. He paused, his eyes scanning the room. But if we attack them now, we may be making a grave mistake. We may destroy a potential ally, one whose strength could benefit us all. One of the more aggressive members, a representative of the Vezrak, an empire known for its aggressive expansion, rose to speak. We cannot afford to let them grow stronger. They have resisted us, defied us, and now they've revealed a power we cannot understand. It's only a matter of time before they turn this strength against us. We should strike before they become an even bigger threat. The room buzzed with whispers. The Vezrak had long been a force to be reckoned with, and their words carried weight. But then, a quiet voice from the back of the chamber interrupted. It was the Quivers, the peaceful species who had long advocated for cooperation. Their representative, a wise and elderly being named Solrin, stood slowly and addressed the Council. We have seen the rise of humanity. They have surprised us all, but they have shown us something even more valuable than power. They have shown us a strength of spirit that we should not ignore. Perhaps we should learn from them, not conquer them. The galaxy is full of divisions and war. Perhaps it is time to try something different. For the first time, there was silence. Solrin's words resonated with those who had long felt oppressed by the Council's rule. Many species had grown weary of the endless fighting and the imbalance of power. This new idea of unity, of cooperation, was a glimmer of hope in a galaxy that had been divided for too long. The High Counselor, after a long pause, nodded solemnly. It is time to make a choice. We can either fight this new power, or we can try to work with them. But the path we choose will define the future of the galaxy. Back on Earth, President Montgomery and Captain Ellis were in the final stages of their preparation. They had made every effort to reach out to the rest of the galaxy, extending their hand in peace. They had sent countless messages, some of them met with hostility, others with curiosity. Now they could only wait for the Council's response. "We've done everything we can," Montgomery said, her voice steady but heavy with the weight of the decision she had made. "It's in their hands now." Ellis stood by her side, his eyes focused on the screen. He had seen humanity at its lowest. After the attack, the despair, the fear. But now, he had witnessed something extraordinary. The strength of humanity's will, their ability to adapt, to grow, to become something more than they had ever imagined. He knew that Earth's future, perhaps the future of the entire galaxy, would hinge on the Council's next move. "I believe in us," Ellis said quietly, his voice unwavering. "We've come this far. Whatever happens next, we'll make it through. Together." The final moments of the debate in the Council were tense. The members spoke with urgency, knowing that time was running out. If they didn't make a decision soon, the situation could escalate into a full-scale war. Finally, the High Counselor addressed the room one last time. "It is clear that humanity is unlike any species we have encountered. They have shown us something profound, something that could change the future of the galaxy. But whether we embrace this change or destroy it will be up to us." The Council turned its collective gaze on the screen displaying Earth's representatives. President Montgomery stood tall, her face calm but resolute. In that moment, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the High Counselor spoke the words that would change everything. "We will extend an invitation to Earth, an invitation to join the Council, not as subordinates, but as equals. We will work together, not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners. Humanity's strength is undeniable, and perhaps it is time for us to change the way we govern." A murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. This was unprecedented. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council was opening its doors to a species they had once seen as weak, unworthy of their attention. But now, they were seeing humanity through a different lens. The Council recognized that humanity was not just a threat to their power, it was a key to a new future. On Earth, President Montgomery and Captain Ellis watched as the communication signal blinked, indicating the Council's decision. The invitation had come. Humanity was being offered a seat at the table. But this was not just an invitation to join the Galactic Council. It was an invitation to reshape the galaxy. It was an opportunity to build something new, something stronger, something united. The galaxy was no longer a place of fear and division. It was a place where the future could be rewritten. But the path ahead was still uncertain. Humanity had proven itself capable of incredible strength, but with this power came responsibility. The invitation was not just a reward for surviving the conflict. It was a challenge to show that humanity could lead the galaxy, not just with power, but with wisdom, unity, and compassion. As President Montgomery prepared to accept the invitation, she turned to Captain Ellis. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We've survived. We've fought. But now we have a choice. We can either become like the Council, with all its flaws, or we can build something better. Together." Ellis nodded, his eyes filled with a sense of hope that had been absent for so long. "Together," he agreed, "for the galaxy and for humanity." The dawn of a new order had begun. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer in question. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and now it was time to prove that they could lead, not with fear, but with the strength of their will, the unity of their people, and the power of their potential. The galaxy had changed forever.